Banishers, Ghosts of New Eden, comes to us from the bods who brought us Vampire. That game from a few years back, you may recall, was a gloomy, slightly overambitious open-world action RPG, centered around the dodgy moral dilemma and unavoidable token combat, about as fun as squeezing pus out of a semi-healed wound and using it to fill out your tax return. So Banishers has come a long way since then. It's about a different standard Halloween monster now. See if you can guess which one. It's set in a Puritan settlement in 17th century New England. Bearing that in mind, what specific variety of standard Halloween monster do you think we'll be mostly concerned with? Think carefully. What kind of supernatural entities are 17th century Puritans famous for overzealously hunting, in the sort of hunts certain former presidents have a tendency to ceaselessly bang on about? That's right. Ghosts. Banishers, Ghosts of New Eden, is about tracking down, identifying, exorcising, and beating the slightly see-through snot out of ghosts. What were you expecting? Witches? Don't be silly, there aren't any witches in Banishers, Ghosts of New Eden, except for several. Oh, and some of the ghosts are ghosts of witches, but come on, it's 17th century New England. A few of them were going to be anyway, that's just statistics. Our two protagonists cover pretty much the entire spectrum of race, gender, and competence. Antea Duarte, experienced Cuban ghost hunter, and her Scottish apprentice, Red Rory McCreath, a rambunctious rogue resigned to regularly ruffle roticisms with his rubric. Antea and Red have that rare dynamic in games, an actual established couple, rather than boy and girl thrown together by circumstance whose firm mutual contempt is one climax and beautiful sunset away from clumsily transitioning to Snogtown north of Titgrope. These heroes are in a loving, mutually comfortable relationship between equals, so you know what that means. Things are gonna very swiftly go to shit. They show up to the colony of New Eden, which in terms of tempting fate is a name right up there with Nothing Bad Ever Happens Here-ville, to exorcise the evil ghosts who are bringing the property values down, only for things to inevitably barrel shitwards when the main ghost, not strictly a witch but definitely witch adjacent, proves more powerful than they thought, leaving Red half dead and Antea all the way dead. But Antea comes back as a ghost so she can guide Red across the island through a bunch of easier training exorcisms before they jump straight to the final exam again, and from this springs the central dilemma. At the end of their journey, will Red exorcise Antea and send her spirit on in accordance with his duty as a banisher, or will he try to bring her back to life with a forbidden ritual that entails murdering a bunch of people? It's not much of a moral dilemma, is it? Maybe if we hadn't spent the entire prologue hammering on the point that hanging around after your death is unnatural and wrong and really brings the atmosphere down at parties, but the whole murder several innocents strategy really doesn't help the case. Seems pretty bloody obvious which course of action is less likely to backfire, narratively speaking. Maybe we're supposed to be really invested in their relationship? Main sticking point with that, though, I wasn't. The screen isn't exactly aglow with white-hot passion. Antea mostly treats Red with the sort of loving condescension one extends to a German shepherd, and Red is a bearded, aggressively Scottish dude in a tartan kilt, stopping just short of drying his tears on a set of bagpipes, and I feel like he's a big enough boy to get by on his own now. Thinking about it, the choice would have been much harder if Red had been a German shepherd. All he'd have to do is look at her body and then to camera with a big soppy look on his face, and either one would probably have to reassess the murder a bunch of dudes proposal. Ooh, a German shepherd wearing a little tam o'shanter. Fuck, I'd start killing people before he did the face. But anyway, ghost hunting doesn't strike me as having much potential as a game mechanic, going by reality TV shows at least. Seems to largely involve overreacting to faint creaking noises and getting really excited about specks of dust in the camera lens. In Vanisher's Dust on New Furniture, the ghost hunting process starts when you find someone acting sullen or aggressive, in a way that isn't adequately explained by them living in 17th century New England, surrounded by Puritans who'll burn them at the stake if they smile too much. Then you explore their house to find clues such as diary pages reading "I'm so glad I murdered my husband and got away with it, tee-hee-hee," which are usually cunningly hidden out in the open on a kitchen table under an enormous flashing objective marker. So the core gameplay isn't so much about clever deduction as smacking the ectoplasmic shit out of angry ghosts in the token combat that will occur at more or less this point. Either an angry ghost in some way related to the current mystery, or just some generic angry ghosts who happen to be around and don't have anything else on. So combat's a largely melee-focused, prioritizing targets affair in which we switch at will between Ghost Antea, who has better mobility and doesn't die from running out of health, and non-Ghost Red, who has a big fucking sword that actually does damage and means you don't have to pick away at spongy health bars with your tiny semi-transparent fists. The character switching adds some vaguely interesting nuance beyond the usual dodge some things and parry other things, but suffers from sponginess, lack of enemy variety. Who's your favourite? The white ghost, the green ghost, or the big fat red ghost with the attack telegraphs longer than an episode of Midsummer Murders? And a general sense of being irrelevant busy work, especially when you're randomly waylaid on your way somewhere by 4 generic ghosts who have gone all in on haunting this highly specific 10 square yards of unkept grass. Turns it into a bit of a chore. The 3 or 4 story boss fights liven it up a bit, but half the time don't feel like tests of the skills we've been developing in the generic combat. The first boss seems endlessly bewildered by my ability to dodge out of the way of its charge, turn around and pop it in the bum. And speaking of bottoms, once you've gotten to the bottom of who's haunting who and why, you confront the hauntee, and then the moral dilemma comes up again, as we must decide whether to exorcise the spirit in a mean voice, or kill the haunted person by accusing them of bad deeds so hard their head explodes or something. It's not really a choice because exorcising very overtly leads to Antea's ascension ending and blame murder towards the highly suspect resurrection ending. So sometimes the hauntee actually deserves to get blame sploded and I'd have to absolve them anyway because I'm not stupid. There's never any benefit to flip-flopping. I know, I played both Infamous games and the shitty one. Funny how Dontnod have now made 2 games whose stories both crucially hinge upon a game-long moral dilemma that completely falls apart on examination. Maybe they should process this in therapy. Maybe they were molested as a child by John Stuart Mill.